they'd done it. The Digidestined had managed to defeat Yggdrasil's 7d6 avatar, and had seen a somewhat humanoid-ish body that had been shot from it at the last second as the avatar of the so-called god was destroyed. And together they'd unleashed all their attacks at once, destroying the crystal body, and were all engulfed in a blinding light, with Kulamon and Marine Anjumon trying to help by using their abilities to shield the group from whatever was happening as the light engulfed them all. Slowly, Nicole began to come to, as if he'd passed out and was just waking up. He was now in his human form and slowly pushed himself up with his arms before looking around, seeing that they were in some sort of void, and slowly stood up as he heard a voice saying to look who's finally up. Looking around, he'd seen the Royal Knight and the Great Demon Lord standing together in a group, looking rather proud. Our Digidestined leader then questioned what happened, and the voice of Cat spoke up behind him saying that they won. Turning, he saw the rest of the Digidestined group standing there, and then the voice of Yggdrasil spoke up from a crystal that had a red orb glowing inside of it. They'd said that they had never believed it possible, but their group had proven them wrong, and that they accepted defeat. Yggdrasil then asked what they would do now that the conflict was over. Kat spoke up saying that she'd like to return home to see her family again, and Lucas agreed with that state, wanting to return home as well. The so-called god said that they could assist them with that, and created a digital gate that would allow them to return back to the human world, offering them the chance to return home to their loved one. Mastamon spoke, saying this seemed like goodbye. The digital world had a lot of rebuilding to do, and they would like to stay and help. Andromon mirrored this sentiment, saying that he wished to stay as well. Hugging their partners, they'd wished them the best of luck, and Kulamon looked to Nicole, who didn't move from that spot he was standing at. He asked Lucas to deliver a message to his family, tell them that he loves them very much. Kat said it sounded like Nicole wasn't going back with them, and he told his team, his friends, that he wasn't going back. There was still more to do here in the digital world, and someone had to stick around to keep those idiots from doing all this again, while gesturing towards the group of the knights and the Great Demon Lord. Beelzebumon called out annoyed at the statement, and everyone began to laugh together. Kat hugged Nicole, saying she'd miss him, and Lucas patted his shoulder, telling him good luck, before the two then turned towards the gate. Stopping for just a moment, Kat said to let the others know that they said goodbye. Lucas said to tell them goodbye from him too, and their leader nodded, saying that he would, not to worry about that. The two Digidestined then ran through the gate to return home to the human world. Yggdrasil asked Nicole what he would be doing next, and our Digidestined, now former leader, told them that the first thing he's gotta do is to let his friends know what's going on, and then he would help rebuild where he could. Of course, he'd also be helping to keep the peace of the digital world as well, so that the Knight and the Demon Lords don't start another stupid conflict like the one they did. He told the group that this is their world, all of theirs, and they needed to work together to ensure that remained at peace now that they've got it. The so-called god said that was very well put, and told them that they shall now return them all back to the surface of the digital world, glowing in a white-colored light, as they then all were teleported back to the exact spot of where the remains of the castle of Yggdrasil was left. Craniumon asked if they should start rebuilding, but Nicole told them no, and to let this place become a reminder of their past so that the same mistake are not repeated again. Nicole then used the function call to see Trailmon C89 and asked if they were up for a ride. The trained Digimon told them they were always up for a ride before asking where to. Our now former leader of the Digidestined simply smiled and said, home. This felt nice to hear for C89, along with Kulamon, who was excited to get back to the rest of the group as well. But Andromon said that they'd like to split off from there and discover their own way. Nodding, they said their goodbyes, and the cyborg Digimon then went off on his own path to see where the world would take him. Mastamon added that she would be going with Marine Anjumon back to the Heaven Zone. Something about that place just felt right for her. Lord Nightmon suggested that maybe it's Anjuwomon's influence, and Mastamon agreed, saying maybe. But she then soon left with the little angel, and they too went off on their own. Kulamon asked if he was going to be left behind too, but Nicole told his partner that they wouldn't be able to get rid of them that easily, and gestured for Kulamon to come along with them. Cheering happily, they landed on his shoulder. Belphemon said that they needed to focus on rebuilding their home and to help foster new peace at the borders, and so the demon lords all went off on their own way as well. The knights questioned what they would do next, and Nicole told them to explore the digital world and find a good spot for a new capital. They'll build a whole new kingdom together. Nodding, they all then split off on their own, and Nicole went with Kulamon and Trailmon C89 back to Shining Lake where the others were waiting. We then get the ending scenes to this story of ours. We see in the human world that Kat and Lucas were meeting up with their families and having tearful reunions. We see Lucas talking to Nicole's family, telling them what's going on as well, while messing with his multi-tool. Cutting to Nicole still riding Trailmon, we see he got a message reading, "Don't need these anymore," from Lucas, and that he'd sent them the human and beast spirits of flame along with the Digimental of courage as well. We then cut to Nicole rejoining the group at Shining Lake with Kuzuhamon running over and wrapping her arms around him before kissing him deeply, which he'd returned, kissing her back. We see her telling him something, and Nicole looks surprised but then looking happy, lifting up his lover and spinning her around before setting her back on the ground. Then we cut to the Sistermon girls returning to Primary Village and Dino Tigermon returning to his old village as well, with some Digimon approaching and talking to them. We see the knights all exploring around and checking up on the demon lords who were rebuilding and helping fix up the damaged places around their homes, while also helping those on the other side of the border too, making the Digimon all smile, glad to know that there really was peace now. We then see Gonkumon finding a really beautiful view around them in a clearing from a forest of some kind and contacting the other. Finally, we see the rest of the knights seeing this clearing and seem to like it, as we then follow Trailmon C89 pulling up to the Royal Knights with Nicole, Kuzuhamon, and Kulamon all stepping off, and Nicole talking to the train, then turning to the clearing, nodding in approval, as the site fades slowly into construction work of many Digimon, and then fades again into a fully developed castle. We see fireworks going off in the sky as everyone was celebrating the completion of this new capital, and even the demon lords were there, all having a good time and partying together. Though soon it fades to the sight of a large door that opens up, and we see a bed moving deeper into the room. We see Nicole and Kuzuhamon sleeping together alongside a bassinet close by them. Finally, we watch as the shadow of Nicole moves, growing longer and shooting up the wall, and taking on the appearance of the second figure as the crest of darkness opened up in the center of the head, as if it was an eye watching them, and began to distort, becoming wavy like heat lines were coming from it. And then we cut to black. This is where we reach the end of Digimon Revolution.